This is a fan-generated show. If you would like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Good evening, good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you are. This is Daniel Greenfield with another Greenfield Moment as part of the Glazov Gang. Today we're going to talk about impeachment. It's about the only thing the media can talk about. It's about the only thing that Democrats can talk about. It's about the only thing that your crazy left-wing cousin can talk about when he finds the time in between smoking pot and screaming about Orange Man bad and how Trump is about to destroy the planet. And yet impeachment is really nowhere on the horizon, at least as Democrat leaders try to assiduously dissuade their base and members of their own House majority from actually pursuing impeachment. And Nancy Pelosi worked so hard, scrounged so much money, clawed, scrambled at every possible desperate thing, and sold whatever remaining pieces of her soul could be found inside her Gucci handbag to get the speakership back, is now actually faced with a House majority that is bent on only one thing and one thing alone, impeachment. And Nancy Pelosi has been trying to dissuade them from that every way possible as she sees her speakership and her plan to retire on an upswing going completely down the tubes. In Nancy Pelosi's latest desperate bid to retain power and retain control over her majority, she actually said that she doesn't want Trump impeached, she wants him in prison. This has really been part of her reverse psychology tactic in which she's tried to make every conceivable possible argument about how she wants to destroy Trump of everything short of impeachment. Now, of course, this makes a lot of sense if you're Nancy Pelosi. You're House Speaker. You want a Democrat majority, and you understand that the House majority actually depends on a whole bunch of independent voters who don't like impeachment. It depends even on some liberal Republicans. It certainly depends on some conservative Democrats who also don't want impeachment but do want to get things done. Now, getting things done actually requires working with Trump, as opposed to running multiple investigations in every single possible committee that you can find. Well, that doesn't require working with anybody. It just requires living in a fantasy world and pandering frantically to the Washington Post and the New York Times and trying to scam the same gullible idiots who believe that, yes, the Mueller investigation was going to bring down Trump and he was going to be in prison any minute now. Now, at this point, you would think that the number of Democrats willing to believe this nonsense has declined somewhat. I'm not quite as optimistic on that scale because people like to be fooled and they like to believe what they want to believe. And what they want to believe is that Trump, the great boogeyman that the left has held up all this time, is going to be destroyed. Mueller didn't do it. The House investigation is going to do it. Jerry Nadler, the toughest guy who ever ate a mouthful of Twinkies, is going to do it. Not going to happen, obviously, but that's what keeps the ActBlue donations coming. The guys who are in the House who are pandering on impeachment, who are running all the investigations, they're making a lot of money. The House Democrats who are willing to just go on the air on MSNBC and say, yes, we're going to impeach President Trump. People like Maxine Waters, they're cleaning up. They're suddenly far more famous than they've been in quite a while. Now, meanwhile, Pelosi actually has to have the bigger picture in mind. And the problem with the bigger picture is that she built this entire movement based on Democrats hating Trump and donating a lot of money. A lot of the money that bought the 2018 House elections, that came out of New York, it came out of California, it came via ActBlue. A lot of that money had a great deal of impact on races in the middle part of the country. The problem is the congressmen who won those races, the congressmen and the congresswomen who won those races, they're trying to play a more middle ground. They're trying to appeal to somewhat more conservative voters. But the money that paid for their elections came from radical leftists. So Pelosi has to try and square the circle between radical leftist donors who are willing to put in every single piece of money that they can find, every piece of change they can find into this, and actually trying to run a House majority that's based on a more centrist electorate. And Pelosi is discovering that it's completely impossible. What the Democrats did was they radicalized their base, they drove them crazy, they pushed all the way through into Trump derangement syndrome, and that produced a whole flood of money, it produced a major turnout. All those things were quite effective, but they're not enough to actually retain control over the country. Just because you can get a House majority that way in the midterm election doesn't mean you can keep it, doesn't mean you can win the Senate, doesn't mean you can win the White House in a presidential election year. The problem, of course, is that much of the crazies who actually funded all this, who actually turned out for this, they don't understand that. And Pelosi is now forced to kind of, on the one hand, try to explain to them that reality does exist. So in one of her recent comments, she actually expressed frustration that she was forced to explain to these people that just because the House votes for impeachment does not mean that actually Trump gets impeached, does not mean that he's gone. And of course, predictably, her base does not want to hear this. The average Democrat does not want to hear that. As far as they're concerned, make the vote on impeachment, make the vote on impeachment. We're going to flock down to D.C. We're going to scream at senators. We're going to throw hysterics. We're going to claim to be survivors. We're going to have giant puppets of Trump. And that's it. Then we win. Of course, it doesn't matter that the Senate is actually under Republican control. Pelosi knows that the best shot at actually moving the Senate out of Republican control would be to actually present a somewhat more moderate position and make the Democrats look like they're somewhat effective managers. At this point, if you ask anybody, what has the House Democrat majority done? Nothing. They've made Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez very famous, proposing policies that even they didn't want to vote on. When they got an opportunity to vote on the Green New Deal, they ran away as far from it as they could. They're still talking about infrastructure, getting infrastructure done, and that's still very much up in the air. Because, again, their priority, and this is something that President Trump wisely told them to choose, your priority can be investigating me, or your priority can actually be getting things done and passing an infrastructure bill, but you can't do both. And that's the impossible choice for Pelosi. And it's not quite as apparent to people why Trump forced her to make that choice in a very public way. But if you understand how things are actually running in Washington, D.C., then it becomes very obvious, because Pelosi has a choice, indeed, between getting things done, and there are a whole bunch of people in the House, and that includes Democrats, who do want to get things done. There are a whole bunch of donors who weren't just donating money to the Hang Trump from the Highest Lamppost in Town fund via ActBlue. A whole bunch of them actually do want to get things done, even if it's for themselves, even if it's for their businesses, and for their very particular causes. They're not doing this out of the kindness or the craziness of their hearts. And they can't actually get anything done because the House is a train wreck, because the House, guys like Nadler, people like Maxine Waters are very much obsessed with hanging Trump from the highest lamppost. Because if you think about it, what else are they going to do? Nancy Pelosi can lose her speakership. They're not going to lose their jobs. The only threat to somebody like Maxine Waters would be an FBI investigation. The only threat to Jerry Nadler would be somebody like Ocasio-Cortez showing up to attack him from the left. So guys like that, who cannot possibly lose an election, see this as an opportunity to cash in, to build up their profile, to boost their careers, which is very much human nature. The problem with that is that they're completely sabotaging the bigger picture and any plan for the Democrats to win in 2020. President Trump understands that an impeachment push will actually build Republican turnout for him and for Republicans in general. Nancy Pelosi also understands this, which is why she and members of the House leadership team have been consistently trying to dissuade any kind of impeachment push. And Nancy Pelosi at this point is just at the very last strand of the last tiny hair of her patience. She's tried everything. She's tried telling the Democrats that President Trump wants to be impeached. This, of course, to the average leftist resistance member makes absolutely no sense, though it actually makes a certain amount of political sense. But Pelosi has been left completely unable to talk any kind of political sense into people who are motivated entirely by hate, entirely by the bad chemicals in their heads, and whatever MSNBC is showing them at any given time, and whatever they're seeing on the Occupy Democrats Facebook group. As a result, what they want is to destroy Trump by the shortest and most available route possible, whereas Nancy Pelosi has to emphasize that she would like to see him in prison. She just does not want to pursue impeachment because that would quite possibly destroy any chances the Democrats have of winning in 2020. It might even take away her House majority, though that isn't quite as likely. The bottom line, though, is that the Democrats are caught in a dilemma, in the trap of their own making. They built the river of cash that helped them take over the House by monetizing hatred of Trump. I recall Rosie O'Donnell mentioned when she was caught giving illegal donations through ActBlue, mentioning why was she doing this? Because it helped her sleep at night when, the bad chemicals and Orange Man bad was stewing in her brain. Now, the Democrats have relied on the crazies to win in 2018, but they need the crazies to actually tamp down the craziness in 2020, and that does not look like it's happening. Instead, the Democrat field is pushing crazier and crazier proposals, things that Middle America is not that happy with, and even most Americans are not necessarily that happy with, like the Boston bomber voting. And the whole obsession with impeaching Trump, that is very much an obsession for a core Democrat base, but it does not speak to most Americans who, whether or not they like Trump, actually want Congress to do its job. Instead, Congress is doing two things. It's investigating Trump and it's planning to give itself a raise. Neither of those two things are very popular. And so Nancy Pelosi is caught in an impossible problem where her own party's craziness, her own party's corruption, will actually turn her latest speakership into a complete disaster and will bring down the Democrats in 2020. Thank you for listening. This has been another Daniel Greenfield moment, courtesy of the Glazov Gang, run by our cordial host, Jamie Glazov. Don't worry, Jamie Glazov will be back with many, many more Jamie Glazov moments and interviews and discussions, and you can see all of those and subscribe to all of them by subscribing to the Glazov Gang's YouTube channel and going to the Glazov Gang website. Thank you for listening, and good morning, good afternoon, and good night.